Absolutely Talks, empowering talent for global careers. Brought to you by Absolutely French, presented by Armel Pervin.
Hello everyone, happy to have you today. So my name is Armel Perben. I'm the founder of Absolutely French, and today I'm happy to welcome Michael Piker. He's a VP of Total Rewards for Shiseido in Tokyo, in Japan. And just to introduce a little bit about me, so we are going to speak, of course, about inclusion, as you have seen in the title. And about same-sex expat living abroad. I think it's a very important topic. Recent studies show that there are around 4.2 million LGBT individuals in couples living abroad, and over 60% of countries worldwide have laws that restrict or penalize LGBT rights, limiting mobility opportunities for these couples and creating a demand for targeted support. Yet, only I think 21% of companies have specific support for same-sex expat partners. At Absolutely French, we are very proud to have 8% of our participants who are same-sex couples, reflecting the growing diversity in global mobility. So this is a good point. And when I founded Absolutely French, 20% of expat spouses wanted to work, and today we have 80% of the people who come to Absolutely French who want to find a job. So there is a huge change in demand, and it's good to have a new specific service to help expat partners develop their own career, not only the talent, and because they are also talent. I always say talent marry talent. So, of course, partners are talent also, and we need to take care of them with a specific service. So, just to start, so, sorry, I just... Now, Michael, well, could you please, so you lived abroad in many countries, so it's always very good to have an expert in the field and also an expat, because you have a very interesting way about your experience. And so you are a global talent rewards leader, and you were also an expat child, so I think it's also interesting. And you are now an expatriate in Tokyo, and in a same-sex couple. Yeah. So could you explain us about your life and what happened to you in Tokyo during the last 6 months?
So let's see, this is my fourth time in Japan. However, it's a 30-year gap since the last time I lived there. In between, I've lived in, 9 countries around the world. So I've been moving, I guess, 36 times. So many, many times. I was, for example, so I'm a U.S. national originally, married my husband in 2016, legally in America when it was legally allowed. And then subsequent to that, we lived in Switzerland, Netherlands, the UK, which, as you know, recognize same-sex marriage. Fairly easy to just bring my husband along and we lived together. When we moved to Japan, I knew this before I left. It's still not legally permitted. So it was a bit more tricky to go as a couple. And fortunately, after 4.5 months, we finally got our exception accepted as a couple. But it took a lot of letters, lobbying from my boss. Shiseido is one of the most famous companies in Japan for DE&I, and I'm, an HR executive. So the combination of Shiseido, my role, the time, and my living with my husband, we wrote in the letter, and I think that was substantial enough to prove that we got the exception. but it was tricky. When you move halfway across the world, you can't live with your loved one legally, then you question whether you can stay. You question whether you made the right decision, I'll be honest. And most of the G7 countries do um, obviously accept legally same-sex marriage, but Japan is one of the few that doesn't. But slowly and surely, I think things are changing.
So that's a good point. And does your husband have
No, he
work
only
visa?
has a resident visa. You know, and I know in France, Netherlands, you could work and reside. Japan is very strict unless he gets his own job. Otherwise, he can only just essentially be a house husband.
Okay. Okay, that's
Right.
a difficult point. I can
It
agree.
is, it is. And he's
Because
in fashion as well.
so okay, and he came, he knew
We
that
knew
it would be
what
like
we were
this.
getting into, but he and I have moved in so many places. We forgot when you move to a difficult country, we've never experienced, and then we didn't realize how difficult it was. You know, and I know when you live in Europe, it's very accepting, tolerant, and it's easy. Um, but this one was one of my harder assignments, I'll be honest.
Hmm. Okay, but you are going to stay
Probably, yeah,
3 years,
three to
yes?
five. I typically do cycle through 3 to 5, and then somebody calls me about a job somewhere in the world, and I pack my bags and go. So, so yeah, I'm quite used to this.
Okay. Alors, what are for the key challenges for same-sex expat couples? Huh? Because for me, you lived in different countries, so maybe you also have the experience in Europe. Maybe there are other challenges for expat same-sex couples. So, what are the most significant
Uh,
challenges
yeah,
for
so
you?
many, both living and then when the company doesn't necessarily have very inclusive policies. So typically, I'll be honest, a global mobility policy, let's say, or a local hire for national. I've been doing this 35 years. They're set up for heterosexual couples, nuclear families. So when you have partnership and different lifestyles and different orientations, I'll go through the classic list. For example, benefits. Benefits, do they cover your husband or your wife? Um, if you look at dual employment support for a spouse, but not necessarily a partner, um, even the definition of partner in the policy needs to be expanded and be more open-minded. If you look at the RMC support in the host location to make sure the vendor, like mine was Japan Mobility in Tokyo, and I was the first case. They didn't have a lot of experience. The immigration lawyer
Oh, wow.
in Tokyo was not very experienced in the exception um, legal statutes. I did the research on my own.
Hmm.
So I can it's just list after list where, from a DE&I standpoint, policies need to be more inclusive, and this is one simple example I experienced. Um, and how you define the family. When you sign a lease contract, do they allow a couple to live together? And the landlord's open-minded about that. Um, Language support for spouse, but not your partner. Um, Home leave support. I mean, I can go through the list. So all of this has to
Yeah.
be addressed and be more contemporarily written for the reality of the world today. And surprisingly, not many are.
Yeah, it's true. Because I remember some people we met who were expat and they were not married, so
Yeah,
the partner couldn't have any service. So it just it's so strange now in the world we live that yeah, we need to have exactly what you said, more
Yeah.
large
I mean,
definition. Mm.
it starts with the RMCs and DSPs. They need to be, you know, this cognizant or conscious of a very different workforce today. And then the dual career support for the partner, the medical support, the
Mm.
cost of living support, the relocation management support for destination in the host location. The entire ecosystem of support needs to shift, and it's
Mm.
dramatically. Um, but at my last couple companies, I've made a change because of this, both personally and because it's the right thing to do.
Mhm. Interesting. Interesting to know. Okay. So, and how can global mobility teams be proactive in addressing these
Well,
challenges? What do you think?
ironically, when I arrived in July, in August, we revised our policy. And my case and other requests forced us to rewrite every aspect of our short-term, long-term talent mobility strategy. So we had a 45-page classic policy, and my team and I went through every single element and made it contemporary. So we expanded the definition of partner. We looked at vendors that support couples, medical, dental, life, relocation, RMCs, DSPs. We changed to be more immigration lawyers. So it really required a complete rewriting of how we make it more D&I enabled. Um, Shiseido is
Mm.
a very famous brand. We probably have one of the most progressive D&I agendas in Japan. We have 60% of women actually run the company, which is fantastic. A female CFO,
Yeah.
um, and more than half of our assignees are women, who are the principal earner, which is great. So we need to do this. And Shiseido, in some respects, is kind of the ambassador of change in Japan. If we do it, then other companies will follow
Mm.
what we do. Um,
Exactly.
and my case, I've published quite visibly, and we've started to lobby the Ministry of Immigration for highly skilled migrants with the help of Permits Foundation to try to change the law. And then slowly the statutes by prefecture in Japan are finally adjudicating that it's unconstitutional. So I think over time it's going to become like the States in Europe where it's going to shift to legal marriage. So
Mm.
there's a lot of change
That's
going on.
very good. Very good. Mm. And just to introduce to the people who listen to us, maybe they don't know Permits Foundation. So
Yeah,
can you give a
they've been around
very
20 years. Julia at Froggerman Siobhan, who's one of my best friends, founded it. It's very focused, based out of The Hague in the Netherlands, to lobby governments to change, and it's for all DE&I support, not just same sex, for highly skilled migrant couples that partners are able to go legally into a country and reside and work. And they have a heat map that's quite famous. But most importantly, the world is not as mobile as you think. And there's a lot of barriers to mobility. And the one like your firm as well that level the playing field for mobility and allow more people to move legally. Um, but there are a number of countries where it's tricky to move to, and they help make that happen.
yes, yes,
Yes,
and it's where we meet.
exactly.
Where we met
Indeed, in London.
Permits Foundation. Yeah,
Exactly.
we, yeah, exactly. Mm. Okay, so and just to yeah, yeah, about job opportunities for the partner. What do you do in Shiseido to help the partners to find a job?
Yeah, I
What
mean,
what's the
we're
perfect?
unlike some other companies. If Jed, my husband, or others would want to work, there would be an opportunity to apply for a job. And if you do obtain a job and an offer, then of course your visas are automatically sponsored because you've got another legitimate job. They do,
Wait, so
yep,
in the
yeah.
same
So
company,
they
if
offer,
say,
if in my
okay,
case
okay,
and others, if it doesn't get the exception granted, then the fallback position is I could have insisted on them trying to hire my husband. Unfortunately, he's in a similar profession, so it would have been able to be done. Um, so that's an option. And we do have spousal career support. Like I know your firm provides that, which is fantastic. Um, to really skill up, make you marketable, employable, socially adept, raise your digital profile, and connect you with buyers and sellers in a talent marketplace. So we do that in Japan because we're a very well-known company um, in the industry. So we can do that too. And part-time work and gig work. So it doesn't have to be full-time work. It could be a number of different
yeah,
employment ways. And that's
yeah,
cool too.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 exactly. Because you don't have a stop in your career, even if it's part-time. No,
Yeah.
I
No,
totally
it's a
agree with
smart
you
way to
with
keep
that.
people
I,
relevant. Yeah,
exactly. Mm-mm. Yeah, and to learn new
exactly.
skills, and
Exactly.
it's always good. Okay, and what is for you the best D&I practices you have seen in inclusive global mobility
Great
policies?
question. I used to run at some of my prior companies, both D&I and Total Rewards together. I found the most progressive companies use mobility to advance their D&I agenda. So very simply, just being very frank, mobility is a fantastic area to deploy talent on demand as kind of a talent mobility marketplace.
Mhm.
So if your aspiration is, for example, X% of women running the company, which is, or multicultural ethnicity, those that have physical challenges, what better way to serve as an ambassador of DEI to send assignees that represent your ethnic aspiration, your gender aspiration, your orientation aspiration. And I feel innately there's some, the oil and gas companies do it very well. Pharma does it better and better. I've worked in FMCG and I've seen at P&G, Philip Morris, some fantastic practices. L'Oreal, which is one of our competitors, is a fantastic company in this space. Estee Lauder. So um, those that do it well and say and do at the same time and send assignees based upon their D&I aspiration are the best of the best. And you want
Mm,
those that are serving abroad to bring back that experience to headquarters and say, I represented my company here, I came back, the company believed in me, and now I believe in the company and I want to help advance this agenda. They're the best ambassadors of change. And
yeah, 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 totally agree.
probably 10 to 20% personify the very best. Um, but I've noticed in the last 5 to 10 years, companies are getting more open-minded about reflecting their D&I policy into their talent mobility policy, and that's great. So it's a slow change, but it is
Yeah.
coming.
Mm. Yeah, because it's all what I think that before the people company
Yeah.
used to give money to manage the
Hmm.
partner, but and now we are going to more services to give to the partner.
Yeah,
What do you think about that?
I really emerged 15, 20 years ago, 5 to 10,000 euros, dollars, whatever, for trailing spouse, which I don't really like that term, trailing spouse. It's not the best term. But the world has changed, like you said. So it's targeted, let's say, social media experience and skill, or interview skills, video interviewing skills, connecting to particular search firms. So it's very targeted search, selection, finding a job and landing a job, not just giving money. So people are getting much smarter about how to give that benefit in a policy to equip the spouse or the partner to find employment. And that shows
Yeah.
progression. And I'm really, really, really psyched about we've seen progress.
Yeah. When I had the first move abroad, I had nothing. So
Yeah,
and
it's
after
changed
sales
early
manager
2000s and
change.
then 10, 15 years ago, like my last five companies, we had a very particular element in the policy for dual career support, and the numbers got bigger, and then it became very focused and very
Mm,
targeted. So that shows there's an evolution in how people think about it, which is great.
mm. Yes, and more people understand what is the dual
Yeah, yeah.
career in expatriation.
And
Also,
it's support
I
for
think
partners too, not
it was not
just
a topic.
married couples. So the whole inclusion definition around spousal employment has expanded quite considerably. And legally, more people can work uh, because the world has changed dramatically in this space.
Exactly. Alors, just to let you know to the people who are listening to us, please, you could ask question. I have just two left question, and then it will be your turn. So be ready for the question. Uh, just for Michael, what is your top advice for human resources leaders to support the unique needs of same-sex expat couples?
Uh, that what I was saying before, that your D&I aspiration in the people space and your mobility aspiration are linked. So what you say and what you
Mm,
do are the same. So if you say that some of my companies, for example, half the workforce should be women, should be running the company, well, half of your mobile workforce should be women. Um, if you've got an aspiration for LGBTQIA plus, then make that happen in how you deploy, select, and where you send people of that orientation. Same
mm,
for accessibility. So the say and do together, really important.
mm. Yeah. And did you start to recruit same-sex couples in Shiseido in
Yes.
Ethiopia?
So in one is about to just join my team in 3 weeks. So I'm quite happy about that.
Okay.
Um, and increasingly local hire foreign national. So direct, you grab the talent, you bring it permanently. That's extremely popular now.
Mm-hmm.
And Shiseido, like all of our
Yeah.
competitors, are in France, for example. We have a huge footprint in all over Europe, headquartered in Paris. So we have lots and lots of diverse talent right in the country you live in. We're proud to say.
Mm. Okay. Very good. Mm. Um, alors, yeah, and then I think it's more for the feeling of the same-sex couples, but for the feeling of the partners, because you have your husband, and how does it feel now in Japan, living in a country that is not really welcome for
Yeah.
him? How does it feel?
Like for example, now I'm in at my Amsterdam home, and when I walk outside, there's a tolerant, like France, liberal, society that embraces. When I land in Narita, fly 14 hours back from Amsterdam, it's a very different felt experience. So, fortunately, I speak the language. He's Shanghainese, I'm American. So we love Japan. We knew we were getting into, but it's a very, it's not just the orientation issue. It's a very, very strong cultural difference. I worked in somewhat
Mm,
easier assignments like in Switzerland and Netherlands or UK. Um, Asia hard is China, I lived in, and Japan. Culture, language, it's very different. So regardless of even your orientation, just living in Japan as a foreigner is not easy. You must know the language. You must, how you conduct business, how you meet people, how you eat the food, how you travel, how you spend money is fundamentally different from Europe. Um, so he likes it, he knew it, he expected the difference, and it is what it is. If we had not visited, it would have been a very difficult assignment because of culture and language and ways of working. But it's a slower pace. The Japanese are very methodical, um, from how you greet people, how you present business cards, how you eat the food, how you travel on the bullet train, how you book tickets for restaurants. It's cash is still king. There's just so many examples I could give. Um, but I knew what I was getting into. So this is my fourth time living there.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, but I think it's always difficult for the cultural differences about for same-sex
Uh-huh.
couples. I can imagine if you go to a restaurant, or maybe you have more people who are
Yeah,
watching you, and
there's
maybe it's more.
showing affection. People are a little, I don't know, perhaps I act a little bit different because knowing the culture that I'm operating in versus being on a subway or a bus in Amsterdam. So it's very
Mm,
opposite. And regardless, Japan, showing public affection is a little bit different culturally than Europe in general. Um, so I've had to rewire my head. I lived in Asia for many, many years and going back again, I had to reacclimate myself to Asian culture. And that that took a lot of, oh yeah, I'm in Japan. 90% of my day is in Japanese. It's mentally exhausting when you go home from work because you're just
yeah.
all the meetings, the email, the correspondence, everything's in Japanese. And so it's really intense, really intense.
Mm,
But again, I like it, I love it, but I knew what I was getting into. So so
mm. All right. Okay, thank you
yeah.
for sharing, Michael. I just want to see because
Uh-huh.
we received question. Just one moment. I tried to read
Oh,
it.
c'est bon.
I have I
No
don't have
problem.
my glasses, so it's a bit small. Just one moment. What changes would you like to? Thank you for from Claire. What changes would you like to see to better support these families?
Um, Probably three or four things. First, that I always say in the mobility teams that I lead, because it's one of the teams that reports to me, I have a whole slew of people, that the people who run it have been an expat themselves. I really think it's important that people who run mobility in my teams have lived overseas, speak another language, know what it's like to be a customer of the program, regardless of who you are as a human being. This the basic customer identity of moving somebody somewhere else is an incredibly stressful experience. And if you've done it yourself, you can look in the eyes of the expat and realize I can sympathize with them. The second one is that um, there's not one size fits all. The world is interconnected, but it's not. So moving Chinese, let's say from France, from Paris, your beautiful country, to Tokyo, is very different than sending Japanese to Europe. The experience, Japanese tend to live in expatriate communities. They only go to Japanese expat schools. It's a very enclosed community. It's a very different experience.
Yeah.
So your team needs to be conscious that the nationality patterns of people moving are very different and where people are going. That's the second point. The third point is that all your vendors and your systems and your technology is um, representative of the global workforce. You'd be surprised, RMCs and DSPs that still operate in a very ethnocentric, nuclear family, traditional point A to, there's about 70% of the market is traditional, 20-30% is non-traditional. So that's the third point. The fourth point is that the culture and the mindset, your mobility is your weapon to deploy talent. It is your most expensive asset. It's your most visible asset. And if you do it well, then it represents the goodness of your company. And so wherever I work that I use and assignees I assign are chosen very carefully because of that purpose. So those would be the four things I would say. Good, great question.
Yeah, that's right.
Really good question.
Yeah, thank you. Alors, another question from Tom. I'd like to know what trends do you see shaping global mobility for same-sex expat couples in the next 5-10 years?
Many. The biggest trend, arguably, is immigration reform and residency. So I mentioned permits, but in general, national governments increasingly are recognizing partnership and marriage for couples, which makes it much easier. That's a huge trend. That's great. Two is that policies, programs, technology, and vendors are becoming smarter and more sensitive to the different needs for this group. So when you run an RFP for an RMC, I ask about AI and I ask about DE&I and I ask about ESG. If they can't cover those, so an RMC, if they can't tick that box, then I won't choose them. And they're getting better. The management's understanding and sensitivity to this issue is increasingly getting better and smarter and faster. So DE&I has been sort of up and down recently. There's in the States, sadly, there's been a little bit of going downward trend for DE&I. But in Europe and in Asia, increasingly, it's actually strengthening. So that trend I've seen. And then another one is basic things like benefits for partners. There's a lot more choice in the market now. There only used to be like Cigna or Aetna. Now there's many support to send and support. So there's a lot of change, and I think it will eventually allow talent mobility patterns to become higher volume, higher impact, and things will level out over a period of time, I think.
Yeah. Interesting. Yes. Thank you. Alors, another question from Margot. How does a company's approach to diversity and inclusion affect its ability to support same-sex
Oh,
expats?
hugely. So I've worked at, some of the biggest companies in the world, all over the world, and I've run D&I. If you really have a strong pronouncement of your D&I agenda first, which many companies do, we know that, then everything in your people strategy links to how you aspire to drive your D&I strategy, because it links to selection, deployment, culture, representation, inclusivity. So it's all linked, right? So if you've got a very powerful center in your heart for D&I, then everything around the people space follows that ambition. And if your core is very strong, understandable, pronounced, then mobility can be one of the many ways in which you amplify that ambition. And I've done that in all the companies I've worked at.
Yeah, so it's good. It's
Yeah.
good to have you
Yeah.
in the mobility, international mobility. And the other question, it was the same person. What concrete steps can companies take to foster a more inclusive culture? So it's quite similar, but I think it's
Yeah,
important.
say and do. So what you say and what you do, that they're linked. So if your ambition for the four aspects, typically of D&I, so gender orientation, accessibility, and ethnicity, if typically that's how companies define DE&I, and you can then translate those aspects into your global mobility policy. So how large is your ethnic representation for inclusion? Um, how many men and women are you sending? Do you have the right balance? Are you paying them the same, by the way, because of gender equity and pay equity, right? These are all really important questions. Um, and then
Yeah.
accessibility. I'll give you a very important example. Accessibly challenged, so neurodiverse talent and autistic talent make excellent assignees. There's always been a bit of reticence, a bit of caution that you cannot perhaps send excessively challenged employees, but yes, you can. And for math, for
Yeah.
science, for knowledge training, they, the ability and the aptitude is incredible. So my advocacy is please send them and expose them and grow them, because it's the right thing to do. It really is. And
Yes.
companies increasingly look at even neurodiverse talent to send abroad, which is great and makes me, and we do that in my company as well. I'm really proud of that.
Very good. Very good. Yes. It's a good point also about. Alors, another one, huh? Mauro,
Hmm,
legal frameworks for
hmm.
same-sex relationships
Yeah,
vary by country. How do you navigate these legal disparities? Sorry for
yeah, c'est bon.
my pronunciation. Discrepancies, yes. And what advice would you give companies to ensure compliance while offering adequate
Um,
support?
so immigration legal landscape is very disparate and very complex. Um, we know the big ones,
Mm,
Frogman, EY, Baker. It's it's a sub area that's very specialized. So you might think about, I have, to get specific D&I immigration counsel for key host countries where you send people. So when I use my example in Shiseido with the immigration attorney in Tokyo, didn't have any case experience for same-sex couples. There are lawyers, and they do exist in all, we know this, in all the countries we live in, where you can find those that have more case law experience and advocate change. I highly recommend you retain them
mm,
as part of your supplier network. Um, and your relocation management company has real strong experience moving couples. Accessibility challenged assignees have different needs. We know that. Um, moving from developing countries to developed countries have different needs. Um, so your ecosystem, your suppliers, your technology should represent your inclusion just as much as your staff. So who you choose to support your company should be D&I enabled or ESG enabled, just like the people you work for you. That's my philosophy.
mm, mm. Yes, thank you, Mike.
Sure.
Just I take the
Great
last one
question.
because it's nearly so. I have two
Mm.
questions, so I don't know which one to choose. Uh, with your experience abroad, what are some key strategies to help same-sex expat couples adapt to new cultural
Uh,
environments?
it's always such an important question. Mm. So
Yeah.
there are, in Tokyo, for example, there are same-sex support groups where you live. So proximity to folks that uh, or individuals or couples that are similar to you helps. Um,
Mm,
social media groups, there's so many in all the cities I've lived around the world where I can land, connect, feel included, feel accepted quickly. Um, I do that on my own. If the company gave some support from the program to the couples as part of the service, that would really help. Um, but
mm,
cultural, food, finding the house, what neighborhood you live in. Would your neighbors be accepting of a couple like you living there? That was something consciously I thought about when I found my new house in Tokyo. The neighborhood I lived in, the open-mindedness of the community in which I'm living in, the social circle in which I engage in. So all those play a really important role to be successful as a couple and feel like you're welcomed and your life will be good. Um, you need to make a real effort in this.
Yeah, and I think it's a very good tip to give a local group for the people
Yes,
to show, to give them the name of the groups and
indeed,
where they can connect
indeed.
and to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
proactive in this one. Yeah, it's interesting. Mm. Okay,
Mhm.
thank you, Michael. Do you have the last to end the discussion? Do you have
Sure.
something to give to the audience? And we,
This is a topic I talk about a lot because it needs to be talked about more. It is, like you said, 8% of your clients. It will predominantly grow, I'm sure, probably to 30 or 40%. Um, so it's a portion of the workforce that needs to be represented, included, and supported. So it's part of our job. And if we do it well, what and how we choose the workforce to send anywhere in the world should represent the societal values in which we dearly love. And if we do this well, it represents your company well, it represents your country well, it represents your policy well. And 36 years doing this, I've finally seen some progress. In the last 10 years, where people are really listening to what I'm saying, the first 20 years, not many people were listening. So there is progress. Many more vendors, more
mm,
technology, more people, more groups, more support. Astonishingly, it's getting better. And countries, supporting legally marriage as well has changed dramatically in the last 20 years. And that's helped enormously. So, so thank you for listening.
yeah. Yeah, no, no, yeah, I think it's a very important topic. So it was important
Thank
for
you.
me to speak about
Thank you
this
for
today.
having
So
me here.
thank you, Mike. Yeah, and I'm just conclude now. So thank you so much for being with us and share your very, very insightful topics for everybody today. So the next session will be the 10th of January, just to be sure. It's Ludivine Requena from Carrefour. She's the International Mobility Manager of Carrefour. Will come to speak about human-centric global mobilities. So it's supporting expatriates and their families. So it's also important to have not just the couple, but also with the kids and all of that. So I think it will be very interesting too. 10 January, 1 p.m. on live here. And if you have missed our session before, you can catch up on our YouTube channel and all the podcast platforms. We are also there. And just to, and we have another big project for Absolutely French. And I think it's good to just share it with you today. So we start a training. The name is Prepare and Turn Your Mobility into a Professional Opportunity. It's for expat partners, just expat partners. And for it will be in English. It will be a 4 weeks program, and you will find more information on my LinkedIn profile very, very soon to register. So thank you so much. And just remember that expat partners are talented professionals, and they need your support as human resources experts. So thank you. And yeah, they are very, very talented, all the partners that we welcome. So thank you to support them.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much,
Merci bien,
Michael.
Amal. Have a
And
wonderful holiday, a wonderful Christmas.
see you soon.
Merci bien.
Yeah,
Au
you
revoir.
too. Bye bye.